This is the Dali Opticon 6 Mark II speaker. They call it a detailed and smooth speaker. It's a 2.5 plus halfway speaker. For the highs, you get a marriage of a 29mm soft dome tweeter with a custom 17 by 45mm planar element. Both drivers are mounted on a cast aluminum faceplate, and it's the best of both worlds sort of deal. You get the clarity, speed, and dynamics of a dome tweeter with the high frequency detail and finesse of a planar tweeter. For the mids, you get two 6.5-inch wood fiber drivers with a 25mm thick front baffle and extra internal bracing. And these retail for $3,500 a pair or $750 each. And this is the Opticon Vocal Mark II. It's the matching center speaker. It's a 2.5-way front ported design. It too gets the same hybrid tweeter but with a single 6.5-inch wood fiber driver. And this retails for $1,400 each. And then these are the Opticon LCR Mark IIs. These are flexible on-wall and for my purposes rear surround speakers. These are a slender sealed box 2.5-way surround that features the same hybrid tweeter and a 6.5-inch mid-bass driver. And then these retail for $1,300 each. All the aforementioned speakers are available in black ash, satin white, and tobacco oak, and as you can tell, mine all arrived in satin white. And then finally is the Sub E12F. This is a sealed box sub that features a 12-inch aluminum driver. The inputs are RCA, stereo, and LFE, and it's available in black and white. If you want to know more about these speakers or Dali's product lineup on a whole, I'll leave a couple links down below in the description. You can follow that to find out more. Additionally, I did a bit of a deep dive, so to speak, for home theater secrets, or secrets of home theater, that I also do videos and write for. And I met with the folks from Dali at Park Audio in New York City, and they did a really great job of breaking down everything that goes into making a Dali speaker. So again, links down below in the description. Have at it. And of course, if you wouldn't mind just liking this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon for notifications and whatnot. It'll help me out a ton, help me get more products like this in for review. Cheers. Dali speakers in general do have a look. They are a bit more traditional while also looking a bit different than other speakers out there. These ones feature a red woofer with a bit of a texture. The drivers are surrounded by black surrounds and they pop out great against a dark gray wall. My review samples arrived in satin white, and I usually prefer white speakers, though these speakers are a bit more on the matte end of things and they do tend to scuff up a little bit. So you need to exercise a bit of caution with these speakers about just not scuffing it up, because it does take a bit of time to clean them. The front baffle is a bit off-white in comparison to the rest of the cabinet. It's not a complete match, and it's a bit of a different substrate altogether. The driver housings don't quite complement the white cabinets as much as they do in photos, or as much as they do on camera. In person, it's a bit more, I don't know, humdrum than I expect a Dali speaker to look. I actually prefer the look of these with the grills on. They're a bit more muted, they're a bit more scaled back, and they draw less attention to themselves. The sub itself is pretty compact for what it is. I initially thought it was a 10-inch sub because the size is so similar to the Dynamo 10 from Martin Logan. I set the Opticon 6s up where I do pretty much every speaker that I get in my room, about 8 feet apart on either side of my media unit and about a foot away from the front wall. The center speaker is on the taller side, just tall enough to creep over the edge of the bottom of my TV. It's not much of a problem if I'm watching a movie that's letterbox, but I didn't mind it too much, though I did end up just elevating my TV onto some cookbooks because I'm not wall mounting my TV in this rental space, and I find that worked perfectly fine. The LCR is a bit of an awesome speaker for me, very personally. I've been looking for a small and also slim speaker to use as a surround. And then additionally, I also built myself a somewhat slim speaker shelf that sits behind my couch that I can house books on, a lamp on, and then also a pair of slim surround speakers. And these speakers fit on that perfectly. So for me, in my setup, the LCR is a game changer. The sub was placed against my floor-to-ceiling windows on the left where it has the most output, but then also on the right where it seems to have just enough oomph. It was all connected to my Marantz Cinema 70 with the front, left, and right pre-outed to either the EXA 100 or the Marantz Model 50. Sources were the Apple TV 4K or the CXN V2. I'm not ashamed to admit that I watched night one of WrestleMania 41 on this Dali speaker package when I first got it in. I noticed almost immediately that the announcers on the show were coming in a bit louder than usual, or from what I'm used to hearing on WWE programming, and so I ended up just turning down the center channel a little bit. But on that note, that center channel, it sounds different than any other center channel that I've had in-house thus far, and I wasn't able to quite quantify what it was. It was not just a really clear sound in dialogue, but then also there was just a different type of dispersion or a better cohesion with the fronts that I got out of the center speaker. And so I reached out to Dali to find out what exactly was going on and why they designed this center channel this certain way. And this is what they replied back with. The asymmetrical design of the Opticon Vocal is indeed atypical and stands apart from the conventional Diapolito topology. There's two reasons for this. You get a wider horizontal dispersion without the unwanted vertical floor and ceiling reflections if you were to place a traditional center on its side. The only practical solution is a horizontal speaker under a screen. Ideally, all three front speakers should be identical with the same orientation, so they turn the high frequency unit, which offers better voices and intelligibility when sitting off axis. And okay, that totally works for me. I'm no engineer, so I'll just happily take Dali's word for it. But I do notice that when I'm playing Into the Spider-Verse, one of my favorite movies to test out a home theater system with, not only is the surround field seemingly engaged all the time, like I'm completely immersed by these speakers when I'm watching that movie, but when there is dialogue running, I do find that it just disperses nicely towards me. I'm able to pick out exactly what they're saying. It doesn't feel like I have to dial it too far forward like I did with, say, WrestleMania, which I feel like was just EQ'd wrong or something was off there. With this theater package, it just sounded really big, really full, while I was also able to render the dialogue or just hear the dialogue very clearly. I also like the fact that this movie features a lot of music from my youth, and so, hearing some Biggie Smalls in a movie is always beneficial or always awesome to me. And when the music does start playing, those Opticon 6s fire up nicely, the sub takes over, there's great bass weight, it's just so clear, sounds great on this system. I highly recommend it. And the LCRs are a great addition for me because usually what I would have to do prior to building my little speaker shelf was I would have to put speakers on end tables on either side of one section of my couch, and not only did it make the couch smaller, but it was just off to the side. It wasn't quite a rear speaker, but now actually having them tucked in behind me and just with the decibel level dropped a couple notches, I just feel completely immersed, and it's just a really nice addition, and it's nice to finally have rear speakers properly set up in my space. I have been rewatching a lot of movies on the system just because post my initial review for Secrets of Home Theater, Dali has seemingly just left this package behind, and if you're going to leave a package behind with me, I'm going to listen to it. But I rewatched Sisu. It's kind of like John Wick, but with Nazis, and it is quiet in some moments, but then in other moments, it's just guttural and loud and really just amps up, and especially because he just ends up killing so many people in this movie. I just feel it more in my chest when you hear the thuds or the bones cracking or just the gunshots. It's pretty epic on the speaker package. But then also, bad dad moment, but I've been watching Stranger Things with my young kids. This sounds really, really good on that. I wouldn't say that Stranger Things is like the best sounding thing on Netflix, but it does feel a little bit more immersive when things do get going and there's music playing, and it's just a wonderful listen on this package. And watching my kids get terrified from a pseudo-scary show for the first time is kind of awesome. So, yeah. And I could be totally wrong here, but it feels as though whatever they did on Netflix to Stranger Things, the music just feels a little more weightier than it does when I'm playing it through Spotify. I don't know what they did. Maybe it just remixed for surround, and then they just added a bunch of depth to it, or added a bit more oomph on the bottom end of a lot of these tracks, but it sounds bigger, sounds fuller, and sounds a bit more modern. In home theater, with the two integrated amplifiers that I was using, there's not too much of a difference between them when listening or watching movies. The one big difference would be, though, If you're going full range from your cinema receiver into one of these integrateds, the EXA100 does not deactivate the subwoofer output. So if you wanted a full range signal going to your front speakers and they didn't have necessarily a pure full range signal like the Opticon 6s don't, a subwoofer does help to just extend that range. Whereas the Model 50 does cut off the subwoofer output, so you are limited in range, so you do want to set off the cutoff going to your front speakers for movies and sending the rest of that signal down to the subs that are connected to the cinema receiver. When it comes to music though, there is more of a difference. The Marantz Model 50 is a bit more warmer in tone, and it does render a little bit less detailed than the EXA100 does. There's my acoustic track of choice that, if you watch a lot of my videos, I mention all the time. It's Terry Callier's Love Theme from Spartacus, and there is an audible noise at the beginning of that track. It's just like staticky, whatever, and I am able to hear it more audibly on the EXA100 than I am on the Model 50, but only just. I do prefer the Marantz Model 50 with these speakers for music overall, just because I like the tone of the amplifier a bit more, and it also has tone control, so I can just bump up the bass a little bit. There's a track called Flawless by Kid Drama and Louis James. It's a vocal track. It's a track that I seemingly somehow missed when I first picked up this EP on Exit Records. I bought it for the synchro track, and admittedly, when I buy vinyl, especially LPs, I usually buy it for one or two tracks and I just go directly to them, and I never really skim through the album too much. But one day when I was filming B-roll, I let it play and I heard this track and I was like, oh, this is my new favorite song. And it's been on repeat ever since. And it sounds wonderfully large and full and lush on both of these amplifiers through the Opticon 6s. I think the big difference would be that the Marantz Model 50 just adds a bit more warmth. It's more of a warm, comforting blanket of an amplifier where everything sounds rich and full through it, versus the EXA100 that does render the voice a bit more. It is heavily compressed. It's electronic music after all, so there's not too much of a difference between them. But if you like outright neutrality, you like a bit more of a cleaner sound, I would go EXA100. But for me personally, I just don't really care for that as much. I just like everything to sound good, and the Marantz Model 50 does a good job of just making everything that I play through it sound amazing, including on these Opticon 6s. It's awesome. Without the subwoofer connected to the Opticon 6s, there is a decent amount of low-end presence coming out of these speakers, and if you are the type that doesn't necessarily want to implement a subwoofer, you definitely don't have to. When I was listening to a lot of ambient music and even my old-school hip-hop playlist, I didn't find the need to run over and just turn on the subwoofer when I was listening, because there was a decent amount of low-end presence there. But the cool thing is, because this is, I guess, what do they call it, a 2.5 way plus a halfway? Because the speaker is designed this way, you get a decent amount of thump down low, but then you get all the mid-range clarity that you want, and then you get a really nice, clean, and articulate top end as well. It's a really well-balanced speaker in this way. But when I do want to just smash out some loud drum and bass, I can. But if I do turn on the subwoofer, it adds that extra bit of bottom end which a full range speaker would more likely provide. I haven't yet heard a proper full range speaker in my room. I guess the XTF 100s from Martin Logan were the closest thing to that, because they were a giant floor standing speaker in my room. But when it did come to implementing a subwoofer, the 12F did a great job for music, filling in that low end that the Opticon 6s weren't able to fully realize in my space. And then me, being me, I had to try this, and sorry all audiophiles watching, and also Dali, who I've apologized to in advance already. But because I have so much extra gear in the house, I decided to have a little bit of fun with this setup. And what I did for music is I decided to stack my subwoofers. I've always wanted to have a sub array in my living space, and when I do get a bigger space, I would like to have a front array, much in the same way that when you see, I guess it's photos from Rel where they have multiple subwoofers stacked one on each other. I decided to do that with the Dali sub and the Martin Logan Dynamo 10. So I had one subwoofer, the Dynamo 10, connected to the EXA 100 running that amp full range, and the other sub connected to the Marantz Cinema 70. And it just so happened that my CXN V2 was just not connecting to Wi-Fi, or was just dropping a Wi-Fi signal. So I resorted to using the HIFI app within the Marantz Cinema 70 just to get music playback. And so for my straight 2-channel music, it didn't make too much of a difference. I was already running full range. It sounded fine. It was only when I switched to multi-channel music, being able to have 2 subwoofers engaged sounded pretty amazing. Though it did, I think the Cinema 70 is doing something to the signal when it goes straight multi-channel. It's adding something or taking away something, like music in the mids does sound a bit more recessed, sounds a little less polished overall. If you're an audiophile, I don't see this setup pleasing you too much, but if you're a bass fiend like me, this was all kinds of awesome. Just playing a whole bunch of dance floor oriented drum and bass through this, having 2 subwoofers engaged is all kinds of awesome. I highly recommend that to anyone out there. I mentioned this part in my Secrets of Home Theater review, and I mentioned it in, I forget what review it was. I think it was my Marantz Model 50 review or something. But I listened to a lot of 80s music just because my friend Shuthi posted something on Facebook, and it was a track listing of a bunch of old 80s tunes. I'm not going to get into it too much here. I did it in that video, but I do find myself listening to a lot of 80s music again, just rediscovering it. Now that I'm watching Stranger Things again, I'm just wanting to listen to those tunes over it again. And I do find that this hybrid tweeter does add an extra level of not just detail and clarity, but just presence in my room with music. It's really hard to quantify, and I'm really bad at doing this, especially on camera where I'm just flubbing over my words all the time. But there is an extra level of something with this hybrid tweeter in play that not just makes vocals and their directivity towards me better, but it just feels a little bit more expansive. There's a little bit more air up top without being shrill or grating to my ears in any way. And if you like just a little bit more clarity, you like the fastness of your nice soft dome tweeter, but then you also want a bit of that air from the, what do you call it, the ribbon tweeter or whatever, you're getting a great best of both worlds in this scenario, and it's really nice to hear on the speaker, and I highly recommend it. If you're not even on the market for speakers, but you just want to hear maybe something different, take your favorite vocal music or acoustic music. If you can find Dali speakers in store near you, I hear they're getting a bit more popular these days. Go and listen to your favorite music on a pair of Dali speakers. I don't care which one it is, as long as it has that hybrid tweeter. I almost guarantee you'll come away thinking, hey, this is a really nice touch. All right, now my first experience with a Dali speaker was at Park Audio, New York City, hearing their upper tier EPIKORE series. And I came away from that thinking, oh wow, these sound amazing, but I wonder how this translates to their lower tiers of speaker, which is why I requested the Opticon 6s. And hearing these speakers, I can say that they are quite literally a great slice of what the upper tier EPIKORE has to offer. I do really like that center channel speaker. I like the fact that they decided to go with a bit more of an asymmetrical design and just turn the hybrid tweeter to match the front speakers. It sounds best in my room. Out of all the center channels that I've had in thus far, it's one of the best sounding. And then those LCRs, I'm really going to miss those speakers when I eventually do have to send them back. Incidentally, they are on my rear speaker shelf at the moment of this recording because sometimes I receive just a pair of speakers or sometimes a pair of speakers and a center channel and I don't get the full theater package. Those are perfect speakers just to have set up at all times, ready to go for my surround sound purposes. I love them to death. All in all, it's a great speaker package. Great center, great LCRs, great fronts, great sub. If you have a chance, go listen to these. They're pretty amazing. Thanks for watching.